I'd like to invite the first speaker for today, which will be Solomon. And as Joe said, I request all the speakers to adhere to the 9-minute clock so that we can efficiently run through the afternoon, and then we'll have some time for Q&A and a panel discussion. So Solomon Devaraj, who's CEO of TRIAS Healthcare, if you could please come up to the stage. And I'm not going to spend too much time introducing all of you. In the interest of time, feel free to introduce yourself. So thank you very much, and Solomon, welcome.
Okay, hi, good afternoon. Like Joe's mentioned, I think, keeping people awake after a nice lunch is sure enough quite difficult, and he's given the responsibility of that as a first speaker, so thank you for that. Like Mr. Chandrakant mentioned, a lot of statistics around why health tech or healthcare is so important, and I think it has played a very important role in our life, specifically for those who lost people in their family to COVID, and I lost my brother-in-law about a year back. And healthcare, surely enough, is one of the aspect of not focus, but also very, very personalized, in nature as such. So what I would like to talk about, rather than myself, really talk about the platform, the company, and why it is so critical and why it is so important as we feel. TRIAS means Trinity. We sort of feel proud about having to connect the doctor and then the patient using technology, or as loosely used AI, in the current sense of technology. So TRIAS is a state-of-the-art technology platform that, like Alexa or Siri, listens into the doctor-patient conversation and helps the doctor to document at a very high level of accuracy. It also has NLP, or natural language processing, that enables to pick up the right kind of context of medically oriented that needs to be used not only for that encounter, but for future encounters, for decision making and prediction. So that's basically the crux of it, and we feel that this essentially will drive the very, very critical aspect of focus on the healthcare, because gone were the days where healthcare was about access or quality or cost. So it's no more about these three parameters, but it's now about health outcomes. How can I sort of get the best outcome for my disease or my illness when I sort of go to a hospital or to a clinic? So the basic some of the outlooks, as founders, we are three of us. One comes from the business side, that is myself. One comes from the AI side, who spent about 2.5 decades on on AI with GE, and then another doctor, very senior doctor on the medical side. So as three of us sort of deliberated about keeping in mind the vastness of the healthcare industry, $200 billion industry, in India, growing at a rate of about 22%, in the at the advent of virtual consultation, on teleconsultation, drug dispensation, using the electronic media, etc., and slowly but steadily increasing the number of times any one of us sort of see the doctor. What is the real focus? Because the healthcare as an industry is so wide, and from that perspective, when we deliberated, there are a lot of innovations that are sort of going on in the market, right? And I'm sure some of the co-panelists will talk about on the AI and some of the innovations that come along. Innovation around predicting diseases, or predicting what kind of medication will really work in people. Because now it is not about one size fits all, where you go to a doctor for fever or cough, what you get is a very standard medication. But the world is moving towards personalized or precision medicine. What kind of medicine really works on a individual, depending upon their genomics and so on and so forth. So prediction becomes very, very important. Surely enough, a lot of innovations on the clinical pathways. So very, very clinical intense specialities like cancer and so on and so forth, where there is diversity of clinical pathways depending upon the intensity and in the stage at which the individual is. AI and technology plays a very, very vital role about helping the doctor, providing the right kind of recommendation around how should the treatment evolve for a particular patient. A lot of innovation happening there. And as well, device in terms of wearables, device in terms of right at the doctor side or at the patient side. We were talking about with one of the diabetologists, where one of the critical aspect is the dosage of insulin that you basically pump into an individual's body when they are a diabetic. But that has a big bearing based on the glucose level. So how can you sort of have devices of glucose monitoring linked to, let's say, this insulin pumps, so that the right amount of insulin gets pumped into the body. So these are some of the innovations that are coming in. But ultimately, when we as founders saw that for every vertical or innovation that specifically focus on a particular segment, the longitudinal aspect of data availability becomes very, very important. And where do you sort of get that data was a big question. And how do we as technologists provide the right kind of ecosystem to get the data to facilitate the patient, facilitate the doctors to be able to provide the right kind of outcome, right? And clearly that provided these fundamental questions for us. Where do you really, what data do we have currently in our systems? And specifically in India, close to 80-85% of the doctors use paper and pen. And that data is sort of lost at that point in time itself, right? So the carry forwarding of that data isn't there. What data should we really have, or what data do we really need for providing better outcomes? Where do we get it from, and where do we store, and how do we sort of share? So these are the fundamental questions that sort of enabled us to really build a platform, which I'm sort of going to talk about, right? And I think the critical aspect what we saw was, while there were a lot of innovation happening on the vertical side, but on the horizontal or the base foundational aspect, not much innovation. And today, if you look at a critical system that the doctor uses is the electronic health record, or the HMIS in a large hospital. There are a lot of companies providing EHR solutions, but just to transfer the data collation or data tracking from paper to pen to a system. But how intuitive are they? How innovative are they to provide the right kind of insights for that encounter, as well as for each future encounter for that individual, as well as for the population health management. And I think the documentation aspect becomes much more critical when the process of documentation gets elevated to periodic care, critical care, and precision care, like I said, individual or personalized care, so to say. And if you look at the healthcare as a whole, and I'm sure most of us agree, that the data that gets collated is surely unstructured. What do I mean by unstructured? It is in statements, it's in images, it's in lab reports, really divested areas, and also very, very unstructured. Now with this unstructured data, how do you sort of build the right kind of innovation? Because data that comes out of the system, which is a patient-doctor conversation, interaction between drugs, interactions, allergy, as well as the pathological tests that come, and how do you sort of integrate that and provide the right kind of thing? Now today, when you look at digital solutions with the doctors, today in doctors, specifically in India, it is not about comparing a particular software to another particular software, but comparison is how easy am I able to finish a particular encounter with the patient, which anyway takes between 2 to 5 minutes using my paper and pen. How is the system going to replace that? So the flow that we are sort of thinking in our mind is not about comparing two softwares, but really comparing the current way of prescribing, which is paper and pen, where they take anywhere between 2 to 7 minutes, depending upon the type of specialty. And clearly, the doctors want the system to be very easy, which needs to be very, very intuitive, which means that they don't have to sort of necessarily go over the same process and again, but depending upon the flow, the system should sort of intuitively provide the right kind of insights. So every time they see a particular patient for a particular illness, the amount of documentation for him or her should be as reduced. The experience is quite important for them, because ultimately it needs to give the holistic view of the patient. Because today, if you have, let's say, a diabetic patient coming to a particular doctor every, let's say, week or every month, the doctor needs to have the right kind of insight of the patient. If we're talking about women and health, where, for example, IVF is a very specialized area that we are focusing upon, it's just about 20 days of procedure or a cycle, as they call it. But the amount of data that gets collated coming from the the oocyte, the way it's growing, the embryo, how it is, growing, and basis that getting the, success rate more than about, 40%, which is the current, norm, to increasing. So these are some of the fundamental things that experience-wise that the doctor need to see. But more importantly, how can the data be extended not for a particular individual, but for, the population health management, doing the prediction, analytics, and so on and so forth. So that's where I think, a platform like us comes, called, TRIAS, which we call it as a new age, electronic, health record. So currently our focus is on women and health and the mental health aspect of it, but also we have other specialties, a totaling of about 10 specialties. What's so unique about it? So this platform provides the right kind of documentation ability for the doctor, because that is one of the biggest area that is sort of getting missed. Because today, when you have to do analysis or prediction, you need to not only have data, but you need to have data in that sort of standard as well as complete data. For example, if you have to predict a particular person's, medications for a particular ailment, if you don't have, let's say, data around allergy, you might end up giving the wrong kind of, medication, which might have a big, impact, so to say. So the platform has a AI engine, conversational AI, which listens into the conversation of the doctor and patient, transcribes the content with a very high level accuracy, but more importantly, through NLP, gets the right kind of insights, medically relevant content from that conversation and transcribed content and put them into the relevant field. Then for the doctor to just have a high level view and then push them into the system. And then as the doctor then meets the patients, furthermore, provides wide variety of insights for that specific patient. And then the system also has the ML part of it, which learns over a period of time and provides the right kind of, pathways, so to say. And keeping in mind, the situation where right now 30 to 40% of the visits are virtual, it also integrates the telemedicine part of it. Rather than having two systems, the clinical system also has the telemedicine aspect of it, internally. Keeping in mind, various strata of the healthcare system, what we have done is we have developed products which sort of touches all across the healthcare ecosystem. So we have platform for a particular doctor who's a single doctor, or it could be a setup which has like a nursing home, as well as for individual labs and pharmacy. Because unless and until this entire collaboration of data or entire collaboration happens, it's very, very difficult to provide the right outcome or the health outcome, so to say. So from that perspective, we've sort of built multiple pieces of the puzzle that ultimately comes together for a higher impact rather than creating one size fits all. But more importantly, specialization based. Because today's system has one size fits all, where each and every specialty sort of comes with a particular, you come with a chief complaint, you document certain allergy, you document certain diagnosis, and then medication. While it is good from a perspective of providing prescriptions to the patient, but really does it create the health outcome is where the question mark, and where we are really, really focused about providing specialty based intervention. So IVF specialist will need that specialization. A maternity specialist will require that. For example, we are working with a group of 150 doctors in the Kanyakumari district, where the system provides certain takeaways depending upon certain inputs based on allergy and so on and so forth, so that they can create some triggers to an expert panel who then can provide the right kind of insight to reduce a prenatal mortality, kind of a thing. So overall, all in all, we feel that the impact that we are creating, both in terms of the efficiency as well as the impact to the clinician as well as the doctor, is going to sort of get at mass scale. Because ultimately we see our platform sort of being like a Microsoft Word for the physician community. And I would also like to sort of end the presentation by saying that our focus is surely on the rural areas as well. In India, if you see, 3/4 of the doctors are in the urban areas, but then the population reverse is in the rural areas. So how do you really get these kind of systems in the rural areas, so that one, the connectivity, as well as getting the right kind of insights for the patients out there in the rural areas is a focus. And we work very closely with some of NGOs. So we have Breads, Don Bosco Breads, where we are working along with them on the women and child area, in North Karnataka, getting good amount of insights and helping them to provide not only medication but provide the right kind of medication for the better outcomes. And then another NGO called Mental Health Action Trust, who are there in Kerala, and they have about 52 centers all across Kerala, providing support in terms of psychotherapy and so on and so forth. Our very, very special and specific mental health platform sort of gets utilized there as such. Yeah, so I think from our perspective, one of the I've been having conversations with some of the participants. For us, very clearly, we see that one person, whether it could be Google or Microsoft, cannot really impact or create the one size fits all kind of a solution for healthcare, because it is a broad based specialty and domain, and we constantly look for a partnership, constantly look for people to join, and obviously to invest as well, for us to really take forward at scale the entire implementation. So with that, I'll probably stop, and I hope I've taken my 9 minutes or maybe more than that, and happy to answer any specific questions when you go to the panel. Thank you so much.